Anna's life had always been painted with the quiet brushstrokes of longing and solitude. For years, she carried the ache of an empty cradle, a silent house that echoed with the absence of children's laughter. Society's whispers grew louder with each passing season, casting shadows of pity and judgment on a woman who had nothing but love to give. Yet, beneath her gentle smile lay a fierce, unyielding heart, a heart ready to defy fate and rewrite her story. One rainy afternoon, as she walked through the dusty streets of her small town, Anna's eyes caught a glimpse of something that would change her life forever. 5 boys, ragged and forgotten, huddled beneath a battered shelter, their faces etched with hunger and despair. Each carried scars invisible to the world but seared deep into their young souls. They were the unwanted, the lost, the overlooked, the abandoned. And in that moment, Anna saw not their brokenness, but their boundless potential. She saw 5 futures waiting to be nurtured. Without hesitation, she opened her modest home and her heart wide enough to embrace their pain, their fears, and their shattered dreams. The days that followed were woven with relentless effort, endless nights spent soothing scraped knees and wiping away tears, mornings filled with whispered prayers and quiet determination. Anna poured every ounce of strength, every drop of love, into raising these boys who had once been cast aside. She was their shelter in the storm, their steady flame in the darkest nights. The road was far from easy. There were moments when exhaustion threatened to swallow her whole, when doubts crept in like cold shadows. Neighbors muttered their disapproval, questioning why a woman who couldn't bear her own children would take on such a daunting responsibility. But Anna held fast, her spirit unbroken, fueled by the fierce conviction that love could heal what the world had wounded. She witnessed the boys grow, not just in size, but in character. From timid, wary children, they blossomed into resilient young men, each carrying the imprint of Anna's unwavering faith. Her sacrifices became their foundation, her courage, their guiding light. Through scraped elbows and broken dreams, through laughter and tears, they built a family not bound by blood but by love, by choice, and by a shared journey of survival and hope. Anna's home transformed into a sanctuary of second chances, a place where the unwanted were wanted, where the broken were made whole. Her story whispered through the town like a gentle breeze, a testament to the power of compassion to rewrite destinies. And though the world had once turned its back on them all, Anna and her 5 boys stood together, unshaken and unbowed, proof that sometimes the greatest families are forged in the fires of adversity and love's relentless embrace. As the seasons turned, Anna's home blossomed with a joy that seemed almost impossible in a world that had once rejected them. The 5 boys she had taken in with trembling hands and a hopeful heart were no longer shadows on the street. They were vibrant young men, their spirits ignited by the love and stability she tirelessly nurtured. Every morning brought the sounds of laughter echoing through the rooms, a symphony of life that filled the once silent corners of her house. They grew not only in stature but in heart and mind, their eyes brightening with dreams and confidence that had been all but extinguished before. Each boy carried with him a story of pain, but also the promise of transformation, and Anna witnessed these small miracles daily. She celebrated their first steps toward independence, the pride in their achievements, the way their shoulders straightened as they learned to stand tall in a world that had doubted them. From the quiet moments spent helping with homework to the boisterous evenings of shared stories and playful teasing, the threads of family were woven tighter with every passing day. It wasn't just a house anymore. It was a home, pulsing with warmth, resilience, and boundless love. Anna herself blossomed alongside her sons, her heart swelling with a mother's pride and a fierce protective instinct. She watched as they ventured into the wider world, some seeking education, others finding work, but always returning with stories that spoke of courage, hope, and the unbreakable bond they shared. Her sacrifices, once lonely and silent, were now honored in the bright eyes of her sons and the steady strength they carried into their futures. The community began to notice the remarkable transformation. What was once seen as a house of misfits became a beacon of hope, a living testament to the power of unwavering love and belief. Anna's laughter, once rare and fragile, now rang clear and joyful, a sound that drew others near and warmed even the coldest hearts. The boys grew into men of character, resilient, kind, and determined, not because of what the world had given them, but because of what Anna had given, a home filled with love, acceptance, and relentless hope. Through every trial and triumph, the family stood united, their story unfolding like a bright tapestry against the backdrop of a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. And in that tapestry, Anna's love was the thread that held everything together, the steady, unbreakable force that turned 5 unwanted boys into a family bound not by blood, but by heart, spirit, and an unshakable hope for the future. One fateful afternoon, as Anna was returning from visiting her youngest son's home, a sudden scene stopped her heart cold. A small crowd had gathered near her street, whispers of distress filling the air. Her eyes locked onto a fragile figure lying motionless on the ground, a boy no older than 7, his school uniform dirted and crumpled. Beside him stood his sister, barely 9, her face streaked with tears, trembling with a sorrow too deep for her years. He collapsed, she whispered, a haunting breath barely audible. He was crying because he was hungry. The weight of those words crushed Anna's soul in an instant, the stark reality of childhood hunger, so close, yet so often unseen, brought her to her knees, her heart breaking for a boy she didn't even know, yet somehow felt bound to by an invisible thread of shared humanity. She rushed him to the hospital herself, every moment a desperate prayer, but fate was merciless. Despite the doctor's efforts, the boy's tiny life slipped away quietly, alone and forgotten. That night, Anna wept as if she had lost her own flesh and blood, the sorrow carving deep lines into her spirit. Sleep refused her. Instead, her mind wrestled with anguish and a fierce determination. She thought of all the children like him, hungry, overlooked, desperate, and an idea took root, fierce and urgent, refusing to be silenced. Before dawn, a plan emerged from the depths of her grief, a free restaurant, right there on her street, a sanctuary where hungry children could come and be fed with no questions asked, no stigma attached. It would be a place of hope, nourishment, and dignity, a shield against the cruelty of hunger and neglect. With trembling fingers, she reached out to her sons through their family WhatsApp group, sharing the heart-wrenching story of the boy and the vision blooming in her heart. The response was immediate, overwhelming support, promises of help, and a shared resolve to transform grief into action. Together, they set in motion a plan to build the restaurant, pouring their resources, energy, and love into every detail. The opening day arrived like a miracle, chefs and workers ready, doors flung wide, and children flooding in with laughter, and hungry eyes finally met with full plates. The transformation was palpable. Children who once skipped school from hunger now came eagerly, their spirits buoyed by full stomachs and a newfound sense of belonging. Anna watched, tears streaming freely. As her grief was woven into hope, her heartbreak forged into a legacy of compassion. The restaurant became more than a place to eat. It became a symbol of love's power to heal, to change, and to renew. And in that simple act of giving, Anna found a purpose that reached far beyond herself, a light that shone through the darkest moments, promising that no child would ever be forgotten or left hungry again. Driven by the sorrow that haunted her heart, Anna threw herself into bringing her vision to life. The loss of that little boy had ignited a fire within her, a fierce, unyielding determination to ensure no child would ever suffer the same fate again. She began by gathering her sons, each touched deeply by the tragedy, their hearts heavy, but their spirits united. Together, they pooled their resources and rallied the community, reaching out to friends, neighbors, and local businesses with a passionate plea to help build a free restaurant dedicated to feeding hungry children. Months of tireless planning followed, countless meetings, calls, and visits to secure the perfect location, hire compassionate staff, and find chefs who shared their mission. Every detail mattered. Anna insisted that this place be more than just a kitchen. It had to be a refuge, a warm, welcoming space where children would feel safe, loved, and valued. The walls would echo with laughter instead of silence, and the tables would overflow with nourishing meals served with kindness and dignity. When the day finally came to open the doors of what they named Anna's Hearth, an overwhelming wave of hope washed over the community. Children from every corner of the neighborhood poured in, their faces lighting up as the aroma of fresh-cooked meals filled the air. For many, it was their first full meal in days, their first moment of relief from hunger's gnawing ache. The transformation was immediate and profound. School attendance rose as children who once skipped classes due to hunger now eagerly returned, energized and ready to learn. Parents whispered their gratitude, eyes shining with tears, while volunteers came forward, inspired by the generosity and compassion fueling this miracle. Anna stood quietly at the edge of the bustling dining room, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. The pain that had once threatened to consume her had blossomed into a powerful force for good, proof that even the deepest grief could be the seed of profound change. Her sons moved around her, their faces alight with joy and determination, united by a cause far greater than themselves. The restaurant soon became a beacon of hope, attracting attention far beyond their small neighborhood. Donations began to pour in, food supplies, money, and volunteers eager to serve. Local businesses pledged regular support, and social media buzzed with stories of the incredible woman who had turned tragedy into a thriving lifeline for so many children. Every meal served was a promise kept, every smiling child a testament to the power of love and resilience. Anna's Hearth was more than a restaurant. It was a living legacy, a testament to a woman who refused to let sorrow define her, who chose instead to feed not just hungry bodies, but hungry hearts. In this sacred space, hope was reborn, and a community found strength in the simple, profound act of breaking bread together. Years had passed since Anna had last seen the man who once called himself her husband, the man who walked away in silence, leaving behind a broken promise and a heart heavy with unanswered questions. Yet, fate had a way of stirring even the deepest wounds, reopening chapters long thought closed. It was on a chilly winter afternoon, during a bustling gathering at Anna's Hearth, that she first saw him again. He was a shadow among the crowd, gaunt and weary, a stranger cloaked in the familiar face she hadn't forgotten. Matthew, once proud, strong, and full of dreams, now stood before her, frail and humbled, eyes clouded with years of regret and sorrow. Her heart pounded with a tumult of emotions, shock, pain, confusion, memories rushing back like a flood. She saw not the man who had vanished years ago, but a ghost burdened by the weight of his own failures. His clothes were tattered, his hands trembling as he looked upon the place she had built from nothing but love and perseverance. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The world hushed around them, leaving only the raw, unspoken history between two souls scarred by separation. Matthew's voice was barely a whisper, cracking under the weight of shame and remorse as he spoke her name. Anna's breath caught. The years of loneliness, the nights spent wondering why, all came crashing down in an unbearable ache. Yet, despite the pain that clawed at her chest, she found herself unable to respond, not out of bitterness, but from a place of quiet strength forged in the fires of her trials. The encounter stirred something deep within her, a storm of memories both tender and tormented. She recalled the laughter they once shared, the fragile hope they had nurtured together, and the cruel silence of his departure. That night, alone in the stillness of her room, Anna let herself remember everything: the warmth of his touch, the hollow ache of abandonment, the fierce determination that had kept her going through it all. By morning, her heart had settled into a resolve as steady as the dawn. She reached out to her sons, sharing everything: the shock of his return, the flood of emotions, the questions that had lingered for so long. They listened with respect and understanding, offering support without judgment. Together, They sought out Matthew, finding him living in a modest room near the market, a man stripped of pride but not of hope. When Anna stood before him once again, it was with no anger, no tears, only a quiet dignity born of years of healing. She asked the question that had haunted her for decades: "Why did you leave?" Matthew's confession came slowly, his voice trembling as he revealed the shame and fear that drove him away, the failing treatments, the stares of others, the helplessness he felt watching her suffer. He had thought leaving was an act of love, a sacrifice to free her from the weight of his failures. Anna listened with a heart heavy but open, the pain softened by the truth finally spoken. She told him gently that he hadn't freed her, he had broken her, yet from those broken pieces, she had built a life of purpose and love. Forgiveness was not for him, she said. It was for herself, a gift to release the chains of the past. Her sons, witnesses to this fragile reunion, offered Matthew a place in their home, not as an obligation, but as an act of compassion. Slowly, with their support and Anna's unwavering grace, Matthew began to rebuild his life. The man who had once fled in despair found strength in mercy and second chances, growing not into the husband he once was, but into a man transformed by love's enduring power. Their story became a testament to the healing that forgiveness brings, not perfection or forgetting, but freedom from the shadows that threaten to consume us. Anna's heart, once shattered, now held room for both the pain and the grace that had shaped her journey, proving that even the deepest wounds can lead to unexpected redemption. The days that followed Matthew's return were woven with quiet moments that spoke louder than any words ever could. Anna had learned long ago that some of the deepest connections don't rely on spoken language. They live in the silence between heartbeats, in the lingering glances, in the soft brush of a hand against skin. Their relationship had transformed from one of spoken promises and broken vows into a delicate dance of unspoken understanding, a language written in the pauses, the sighs, and the steady presence beside one another. There was no rush to mend what had been shattered, no frantic attempts to fill the void with empty apologies or explanations. Instead, Anna and Matthew settled into a rhythm of shared glances across the kitchen table, the faint smile exchanged when the children's laughter filled the house, the quiet comfort of sitting side by side in the evening, watching shadows stretch across worn wooden floors. It was a greeting without words, a reconciliation that bloomed in the spaces between conversations. Anna noticed how Matthew's eyes held stories now, stories of regret, hope, and the fragile courage it took to come back. She saw how the lines etched into his face deepened with each passing day, a map of the years lost and the new path unfolding before them. The weight of his silence was no longer a barrier but a bridge. It invited her into a place where vulnerability was met with gentleness and where love was measured not in declarations, but in steady presence. Their sons watched this transformation with awe and quiet respect, sensing the fragile peace that had begun to settle over the family. They saw how Anna's hands no longer trembled at the sight of Matthew, how his once awkward attempts to join family meals became moments of warmth. In the absence of words, there was honesty, a raw, unfiltered connection that spoke of healing far deeper than conversation could reach. One afternoon, as the golden light of late afternoon filtered through the windows, Matthew silently took Anna's hand. It was a simple gesture, yet charged with all the things they could not say aloud: the forgiveness, the sorrow, the unspoken gratitude for a second chance. Anna squeezed his hand gently, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to shed. In that silent exchange, they both found the courage to move forward, not as the couple they once were, but as two souls bound by a love resilient enough to survive even the darkest storms. No words were needed to greet the dawn of their new beginning. The language of their hearts had found its voice in quiet moments, and in that silence, they spoke volumes of healing, of hope, and of the enduring power of presence without sound.